Westminster Cemetery is a very historic cemetery here in Westminster, Maryland. And here in the front of the cemetery, we actually come to the grave of William Winchester. Now, William Winchester was actually the founder of Westminster, Maryland. See, Westminster, Maryland was originally named Winchester, Maryland, but the mail kept getting confused with nearby Winchester, Virginia, so they changed his name to Westminster. William Winchester was actually born in England, and he came to America and founded Westminster, Maryland here. So the town's founder is buried in the Westminster Cemetery. Now, this cemetery is like a big square in the center of Westminster, right off of Main Street. So I'm going to look around a little more and see what we can find. So in this part of the cemetery, there's a lot of older graves from the late 1700s and 1800s. There's also a lot of areas where it's open, and you gotta wonder, with some of these graves being so old and falling apart, you gotta wonder if there are actually people buried down there in this open space. As you can see, some of these historic graves here. And I'm gonna move over this way across the road right there, because there's actually some pretty fascinating graves over here. And when I get there, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So right here we have 5 graves of Civil War veterans. Now, at least one of these graves, I don't know which one exactly, but one of these soldiers was actually a soldier in the Battle of Gettysburg. And after he left the battle, he was wounded, and he ended up here in Westminster, Maryland, and he died here in Westminster, Maryland. So as I'm walking around a little more, it's just interesting to see the layout of this historic cemetery and really realize how many graves there are here. Like I said, this cemetery is shaped in a square, so it's pretty much just a big square, and it has a lot of historical significance for the town of Westminster, Maryland. In fact, one of the original government buildings here in Westminster was said to have been located on the hill of the cemetery, as it wasn't such a massive cemetery at the time. If you look over top, over that way where the camera is, that's actually where the courthouse is for Carroll County, Maryland, which is the county that Westminster, Maryland is in. The police department, the detention center, all the government buildings are right there. And like I said, Main Street is over this way, which Main Street is like one of your historic little streets with all the old brick buildings from the 1800s and everything. You know, kind of resembles to me like Georgetown in Washington, D.C., if you know that area. So as you can see, there's more of the cemetery. You can see how massive it is in its square shape. Let's go down this way and look around a little bit. So this cemetery is still an active cemetery. There are still burials here. Obviously, it's on down this way where the active burials are still going on today. As you can see, there's still a lot of land over here that is open for burials. Of course, I don't know how much of it is actually sold, but there's still a lot of burials to be done here in this historic cemetery. All right, guys. What we have here. This looks like a kind of new grave. Obviously, the flowers have died, but as you can see right there, there's a temporary grave marker for a husband and wife who passed away about a year apart, but the husband passed away in February of 2021, So that was a recent burial right here. So that's interesting to note. I always like to see these temporary new burials, these temporary graves, because I think it's interesting if you come back down the road later on and you see the grave there and you're like, I remember when there were temporary graves there and it was a new burial. So that's always interesting. Now these graves in this area range really anywhere from, I'm seeing graves going back from people who passed away in the 70s to today, even graves that are still not active, like this one, where the person is still technically alive because it doesn't have a death date on it, but they bought their grave in advance. I always thought that was kind of weird, because like you're walking around a cemetery and you have your name on a grave right there and your birthday, but you're not here yet. But you know, some people are prepared for that day, so they have the grave all ready to go. As you can see, up there is the hill, pretty much the top of the cemetery. We're gonna go up that way after we kind of look around here a little bit and see if we notice anything else interesting. Alright guys, so we're here at the center of the cemetery now, up at the top of the hill. You can see a little bit of Main Street, Westminster out that way. And we have this huge cross right here. And what appears to be some family plots around here with the same last names. Yeah, you can see the cross has the last name on it. Albach, and all these graves are related. So as we move on this way, we're getting back into some older graves, as you usually see in historic cemeteries. A few damaged graves that have fallen over. And then you also notice the graves that have faded away over time, hard to read. As we make our way around back towards the front of the cemetery, this is what you see. Like I said, this cemetery is different on many levels for me, because it's a big square. It kind of reminds me of like a cemetery you would see in Washington, D.C. in the city. It's the big square. It's not really like in a forested area or anything, but it's still big enough that you do feel isolated in here. You know, it's a huge cemetery. As you can see, here are some of those above ground crypt graves, I guess you would call them. Really doesn't have a date on it. I don't see a date on it. There's some words on the side. But they're all three are identical graves. And we are back at the entrance, guys. So, right across the road ahead of me is where the grave of William Winchester is, where we started this video. And this will be the end of the video, guys. Alright guys, so there you have it. This is the Westminster Cemetery in Westminster, Maryland. Very interesting place. Thanks for coming along and exploring with me, checking it out, seeing what we can find. Hope you guys enjoy this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, this is Fixed Image saying peace.